Welcome everyone, I am AngloV the Polish guy, and in this video I will talk about my experiences regarding wormhole security. If you want to watch something about general wormhole living instead, check out my other wormhole related videos. After some comments under my C2 guide, I decided to talk about wormhole security specifically. Advice from this video might not work in every case, but everything I will show here relates to my own experiences, so apply it as you deem fit. So, in my opinion, keeping safe splits up into scouting the system, keeping up with what is around you, and then dealing with it. First off, there's the initial scouting. You need to know where you are and what that entails. When you get into a system, you need to do a few things that will ensure your further safety. First off, there's bookmarking the exit. You always need a way out if things go wrong. As soon as you get into the wormhole, start descanning as often as you can. Descan is your most important scouting tool, allowing you to see what objects are around you up to 14.3 AU away. The next thing is warping off the wormhole before your clock timer runs out.
Warp drive active.
While doing that, you should set up safe spots. That is, bookmarks in the middle of space that aren't easily warped to by others. Warp to a planet and mid-warp save a bookmark. This point would be sufficient most of the time, but if someone really wants to find something you left there without combat probes, then they can get on the same grid by warping on the same route as you, while also setting up a bookmark. In order to prevent that, you need a second spot. This time made from warping to a second planet from the point you just made. This way, whoever wants to get on grid of that safe spot won't be able to do that, since they will only have one point of the route you just warped through. This will never allow them to even warp through the grid of that safe spot. A spot like that will allow you to leave an unscannable cargo container there if you need it, or stay there yourself as long as the opponent doesn't have combat probes. The next part of knowing where you are would be to research the wormhole. Use a JSystem database to know the statics and effects of the wormhole and keep them in mind. The statics will dictate how much traffic the wormhole will get. The high-sec ones are the worst, since that's where most of the people will come from. After that, check the killboard activity of the system. Consistent kills by a corporation will mean that the system is occupied by them, but you can check their time zone activity the same way. If it doesn't correlate with yours, it won't be as much of a problem. Of course, a lot of kills the same day are a cause for concern. In case of this scouting trip, I've noticed ships flying in the system, and as soon as they got combat probes out, I got way more careful. The system is obviously occupied, and staying here wouldn't be a great idea. Cloaking up will let me stay here indefinitely though, since there is no way for them to find me. A good way to find about system occupancy would be to research the local pulses too. In this case, because of some ships close to the pulse, I gathered that it's probably a corp operation in here. Judging by the ship name of the Confessor, it's most likely at least a partially German operation, so the same time zone as me. Names of postparts only confirmed that. At some point a great thing happened. I often repeat that you should name your ships to keep hidden. In this case, a player went on to a ship and his capsule showed me the name. With that I can find out who he is, what corp does he belong to, is he a threat, does he have friends here, and so on. Having that name only confirmed my suspicions. A German corp with PvP capabilities has an active pulse in this wormhole. This of course makes this a bad wormhole to stay in, so I left. That's pretty much it for the initial assessment of the wormhole. Now let's move on to keeping up with what is around you. Of course, keeping up with Descan is the most important part of it, but it's not everything. You should also be aware of the signatures in the wormhole. That knowledge will let you judge the risk of people who might be inside the system with you, and knowing the current wormhole connections will also help. For example, let's say probes start appearing on this scan. This itself makes it obvious that someone else is here. You can also somewhat guess who it is by the probes. Are they faction or T1? The former indicates someone who knows what they are doing and being serious about scanning. The latter might be a new player just learning exploration, but don't make a final decision based just on guesses like that. Based on your signature data, you can also figure out what they are currently scanning. Is it the site you are in or something entirely else? By how long their scan probes stay on a single signature will indicate how good they are at scanning too. Remember to descan very often in situations like that. Whoever is around might at some point decloak to warp if they don't have a covered ops cloak. Other times they will decloak for the sake of hacking and so on. As soon as you have some data on the ship they fly, you can think of a way to deal with them, and even if you need to. Remember that what the players are flying might not be the best indication of their capabilities. You can sometimes judge their experience by character age, but the ships itself don't matter as much as they used to because of skill injectors that allow inexperienced players to fly higher-end ships. Anyway, if they don't know what they are doing, then skill points won't make as much of a difference. Now let's go over practical uses. For example, an exploration frigate is very susceptible to being scared off by even just your appearance if you are in a combat ship. If you just want to get rid of them, then decloaking in their descan range might scare them off and they will leave the wormhole soon. Other times that might not be enough, for example for some tougher ships. In those cases, it's useful to have combat probes. If you don't feel like or can't fight, they are a great deterrent anyway. Decloak only for a few seconds to drop the probes and cloak back up. In this case, you don't want your target to know what you are flying. Then you just need to get the combat probes closing in on them. You don't need the scanning data if you don't want to fight. This method works by making your target uncertain and scared of the situation. From their perspective, combat probes start closing in on them, and that usually means someone dedicated to fighting them, probably also capable of it. You might not be in a ship suitable for that, but since you are cloaked, they don't know that. Hence, combat probes work well as a psychological deterrent. Of course, for someone who actually is looking for a fight, this will not work. When it comes to a situation where there is a chance for a PvP encounter, then you need to prepare for it. Having a mobile depot and refitting for a PvP-oriented fit is the obvious course of action. If you want to be the one to start the fight, you might need the element of surprise. First off, you need the location of your target. The best way is of course combat probing, but that might scare off the potential target when you start scanning them. To prevent that, use descan to check their location with some degree of precision. Use the map and the visible scan cone to see if they are in a certain site or not. If you pinpointed them to a position inside your cone, or even better, a site, then you can move your probes right on top of them and get a high percentage scan right away. In this case, it's the Astero from the last episode of my Solo C3 series. The way I handled it wasn't the best since I didn't use the scan down relic side, but you get the general idea. Of course, if your target is less responsive, you can be kind of sloppy in the execution and still get a kill. Anyway, it's important to know what your ship can and can't do, and be prepared to refit when the situation changes. Remember that despite all of what I'm talking about here, you will never be certain of your situation. Cloaked ships will be impossible to find unless you know they are there, and groups of people who are set on killing you will be an issue. With proper risk management, you will live for a long time though. If you are uncertain of what to do, then cloak up and wait on how the situation develops. Maybe whoever it is will expose themselves or live on their own. Also, all of this works both ways. You are scared of cloaked ships or fleets, but they are as well. Paranoia will both keep you safe and allow you to exploit reactions of others. When it comes to PvP engagements, I'm definitely not the person to ask, and I try to avoid them most of the time since my activity focuses on PvE, but I hope some of what I said here might help you anyway. If you want to learn more than just what I experienced myself, then check out the comments. I hope there will be a discussion regarding the topic as always. And if you have anything to add, then write about it. I'm looking forward to your contributions. So, summarizing everything. In wormholes, you need to know where you are, what is happening around you, and if it's a risk. After that, decide if and how to deal with it. Be careful and calm, and you will live longer. Anyway, if you want to keep up with my other videos, then consider subscribing. That's it from me today, see you next time!